Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the May 20th, 2025 meeting of the Finance Committee. It's good to be back and see everyone again. And may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, we'll start with Committee Member Santa Maria.
Here.
Committee Member Harmon.
Here.
Chair Friedman.
Here. All right. Thanks. And so as first general public comment, any members of the public wish to speak to items not on today's agenda but under the purview of the Finance Committee? Is there anybody online?
Chair Friedman, no hands are raised.
Close general public comment, and I will turn it over to our item today to Mr. DiMartini.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, members of the committee. First and foremost, Chair Freeman, staff would like to welcome you back. We missed you, so welcome back. Today's presentation is to give an overview of the third quarter financial review for fiscal year 2025. The recommendation before the Finance Committee today is to hear a report of staff on revenues and expenditures that have been received and expended through the first 9 months of the fiscal year through March 31st, 2025. Receive the interim financial statements for the first 9 months of the fiscal year as well. We recommend, so that Finance Committee recommends that Council adopts a resolution for the third quarter budget adjustments. And then also that's the Finance Committee recommend to the City Council to approve a resolution on a number of salary and position changes that are before you today as well. The agenda for today's presentation, as in similar quarterly reports, is to first receive an overview of the general fund. We will then give a brief overview of the 8 enterprise funds. We will talk about the proposed budget adjustments that are before you in your packet today as well. There is one clerical error on one of them that I would like to highlight for this committee that you can then forward your recommendation to the City Council as well. And then there are a number of minor position changes, some position reclassifications that are before you. Also to, again, better align the functions of the position for the actual work that they're doing. And then we'll take questions, public comment, and discussion. So let me start with the general fund. And we always like to start with the multi-year forecast, really starting at the high level, looking out 5 years. This is a graph that the committee members have seen multiple times. We've updated it recently as it was released in the city administrator's recommended budget for fiscal year 2026 and 2027. That projection column has been updated with the Q3 projection as we are today. And as you can see, the gap between the revenues and expense actually has closed pretty close in fiscal year 2026. We are still projecting a deficit in this current fiscal year, but that gap really kind of closes in 2026. However, you can see that gap widens again. We do have a structural budget deficit. You can see that our expenditures in the out years exceed the revenues as well, and that gap widens. So we still have some work to do, some challenges that we need to overcome as an organization in the general fund, and also with the commitment of achieving our reserve policy targets as well. This table here shows the revenues and expenditures represented in a table as it was just presented on the graph on the slide before. You can see that we are projecting deficits going forward and in the current fiscal year. It's important to note that this table includes our Measure C revenues and expense. Again, our Measure C revenues for the most part pay for 100% capital and infrastructure related projects. And the expenditures line also includes the annual contribution that is required to meet the city's reserve policy target. And so those numbers are included in the expenditures, so I wanted to make sure that the committee is aware of that. Again, you can see that gap really kind of closes in fiscal year 2026, but then again, deficits continue to grow thereafter. This slide here shows a couple of pie charts. First, the revenues on the left-hand side, showing the diverse set of general fund taxes and other revenue sources that we have. You can see that we are including Measure I in here as well in one of those slices. And then on the graph the pie chart on the right-hand side shows how we spend those general fund tax dollars on a variety of expenses, primarily salaries and benefits. The general fund primarily funds people and the services that our essential workers provide to this community. So now we'll dive into a little bit more detail about the revenues and expenditures in the general fund. This graph here on the left-hand side shows our adopted budget in green, and then the dark blue color where we are projecting to end up at the end of the fiscal year for all of our major general fund taxes. from left to right, starting with the highest amount of revenue we get from property tax, all the way down to the lowest amount of tax that we get from real property transfer tax. And the main takeaway on this graph is that where we think we're going to end up for these major tax sources is pretty much in line with our adopted budget. There are no major changes that we are projecting in any of these taxes. Some are coming in a little bit higher, some are coming in a little bit lower, but no major anomalies that are noteworthy for this committee to be aware of. Pretty much the same thing on the expenditure side as well. This graph on the right-hand side, again, where we are projecting to end up by the end of the fiscal year is pretty darn close to where we had projected initially in the adopted budget. So this table here breaks out the general fund, the primary amount of general fund that we get versus what comes in through Measure C. It's really important to distinguish between the two, again, because Measure C funds capital. That's the table down on the right, on the bottom there. As you can see, starting with Measure C, we are slightly overprescribed on Measure C, which has been a sort of a trend that's been starting to occur. And so we've had to make some challenging decisions in the upcoming budget cycle about how many projects we were able to fund with Measure C tax dollars going forward. In the general fund, you can see sort of that breakout for the contribution to reserves that we've been talking about. If you were not to account for that, we would have a smaller deficit of around I think it's about $4.6 million in the adopted budget. And so we are projecting a deficit in fiscal year 2025. That's that far right column on the right-hand side of $7.3 million. Again, that does include that contribution to reserves. And so it's pretty close to being in line with the original adopted budget that Council adopted back in June of 2024. So things are coming in pretty much as planned. This table here breaks out those major tax sources. Again, I showed this in a graphical format on the prior slide, so here we are showing the numbers. Again, there are no major anomalies here to speak of. You can see property tax is coming in pretty strongly. All of our sales tax lines are as well. You can see that we do have a revised budget of $3 million for Measure I that the voters passed back in November. That obviously was not included in the adopted budget because we were not sure that it would even be put on the ballot at that time. We have not recognized any revenue yet because the tax rate just took effect on April 1st, but we will have 3 months worth of actual revenue by the end of the fiscal year. And so our projection of $3 million is a good one. And so we hope that comes to fruition. You'll see some ups and downs. TOT is coming in a little bit stronger, we think, than the adopted budget. And we think that cannabis and real property transfer tax, unfortunately, will come in a little bit lower. But those are some of our smallest tax sources. So not really moving the needle too much on the amount of revenue that we need to operate our general fund departments. And then again, you can kind of see it in another graphical view. Again, no major anomalies here to speak of comparing our adopted budget versus our revised budget versus where we are projecting to end up by the end of the year. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Licoli.
Thank you, Mr. de Martini. Good afternoon, committee member and Chair Friedman. I'm going to now cover the short-term rental. The short-term rental program has been in place for close to 2 years. At the 9-month mark, 44 settlements took place, or an additional $1 million that was posted in a general fund, with $185,000 that was allocated to Measure B for quick restoration. General fund expenditure. This slide is a presentation of a general fund expenditure for both adopted revised budget, as well as the result for Q3 and a projection for the full year. The variances between adopted and revised budget are mostly due to encumbrance that were rolled over to fiscal year 25 after adopted budget was approved. It includes as well approved budget adjustment to cover unexpected expenses for the last 2 quarters. General government is 64% of revised budget. The lower use of budget is attributed to salary saving, but offset by professional service contract. This division projects to finish the years within revised budget. Public safety is at 71% of revised budget and forecast to realign itself with its adopted budget by the end of the fiscal year. Within, we have the police. At the mark of the 9 months, 70% of the revised budget is exhausted, and police will end its fiscal year in line with adopted budget. PD effort to fill vacant position had reduced its vacancy rate to less than 10%. The division experienced at the end of this quarter a 5% increase in vehicle maintenance allocation, unforeseen repair for several fleet vehicles, as well as a 21% increase in custodial service in comparison to prior year. The fire department used 73% of its revised budget and planned to have no change in its forecast for fiscal year 25 with revised budget. The department had a successful recruitment and academy completion for few firefighters and has no additional significant information to communicate at this point. Now we'll move to the community development. Community development is below its revised budget at 66%. The department projects to slightly realign itself with adopted budget. Park and Recreation project to finish the year within revised budget. It currently uses 66% of its budget. Couple factors that result to lower expenses are directly related to lower demand than expected for some of the activity offered and some salary saving. Library is a combination of the administration for the Montecito branch, Central and East Side Library, as well as the on-the-go library. At the mark of the 9 months, $5.9 million was spent, 66% of budget. Supply and services experienced a peak, but is currently offset by payroll saving, mainly from the Central Library. As an overall, the library worked diligently to control its cost and project to reach about 90% of its budget by the end of its fiscal year. Public Work has expenditure of $9.8 million, using 68% of its revised budget. Public Work project to end the year below budget due to payroll saving in administration and engineering, supply, and non-contractual services. Sustainability and Resilience currently has 2 special projects: emergency remediation and the Lot 12 environmental remediation, for which most of those expenses are driven from. 43% of budget has been used so far, but projection for 25 is still to meet revised budget. However, any unspent fund will roll over to fiscal year 26 to help fund the Stern Wharf environmental remediation project and the phase 2 of the Lot 12 remediation project. Community development. Community development spent $11.4 million of its budget, with $1.2 million in encumbrance, mainly composed of professional service agreement for plan check services and building inspection. Community development will end the year below adopted budget due to a combination of salary saving and slightly over budgeted benefit. For this end of third quarter, general fund expenditure is $166 million, or 71% of revised budget, including encumbrance for $5.9 million, expenditure as 77% of adopted budget. Note that under non-departmental, adopted and revised budget include an overall citywide cost reduction allocation for $6 million, which at this time has not been met. This graph is an overview of the different departments we just commented on. Projections are stacked above actual and shown as the right column. The actual forecast columns are compared to adopted and revised budget located to your left in a dark green and blue column. We will now go through the enterprise fund. We will start with the water department. The water department revenue totaled $61.7 million, or 78% of budget, an increase of $5.7 million with fiscal year 24. Service charge received from rates are $52.3 million, or 79% of budget. Other non-budgeted revenue were received, such as rebate from the Southern California Edison when raw water diverged from the Gibraltar Reservoir and through the city hydroelectric plant, refund for Kashima operation, and other water agency for unspent prior year fund. All-through rate revenue is currently tracking above budget. Projection indicate a realignment with revised budget. Expense for the 9 months are at 61% of budget, mostly due to the desalination plant being offline from August to December. Since the chemical and electricity consumption are closely tied to production level, reduced production has led to significant cost saving. Let's keep in mind that the budget is prepared with the assumption that the plant operates at full capacity. Result of operation at this point of time is an additional $7.9 million in reserve in comparison to a budgeted loss of $8.8 million. An additional positive result of $3.9 million as well with fiscal year 24. Wastewater. Wastewater account for the provision of sewer services to the resident of the city. A portion of the revenue is directly linked to water usage when other revenue sources such as sewer tap fees, pre-treatment analysis are all part of that line item. For the 9-month mark, wastewater is 77% of its budget, with a projection that it will line up with revised budget. Expense is $22.7 million, or 67% of budget. The lower than expected level of expenses is a combination of saving in supply and services, which are at 53% of budget, offset by salary and benefits, which are at this point at 71% of budget. After 9 months, the department added $1.5 million to its reserve and project to reduce its deficit by almost $800,000 in comparison to revised budget. Solid waste. Solid waste account mainly for the trash and recycling services. Revenue trend is at expected, or 75% of budget, and is projected to increase by almost $750,000. Expenses at a shortfall of 67% of budget is attributed to solid cost collection services. Solid waste show a $3.2 million operational gain at the end of the 9 months. Projection against revised budget for fiscal year 25 is an additional $1.2 million in reserve due to reduction in spending in payroll and non-capital equipment expenditure. Clean energy. The clean energy account for the cost to procure clean and renewable electric energy on behalf of the Santa Barbara community. Revenue at $31.7 million is 59% of budget. The department decided to reduce its revenue projection by $2.3 million, and its corresponding expenses by almost the same amount. Southern California Edison implemented a mid-year rate decrease of 12%, and because Santa Barbara clean energy rates are benchmarked by Southern California Edison rate by policy, revenue is done as seen on this slide. Currently, 67% of budget is used, and at the end of the 9 months, clean energy has a loss of $7.2 million. The department projects a reduction in loss with revised budget by about $400,000. The airport. The airport came at a loss of $2 million at the end of quarter 3, when projection is still within the trend with revised budget, or a loss of $5.3 million. At the end of the 9-month mark, the department has $24.4 million in revenue, an additional $2.5 million with last year for the same period. Commercial and industrial lease revenue achieved 66% of the annual budget, when terminal revenue reached 77%, growing by 24% year over year. Expense currently under budget at 68% will be within revised budget by the end of this fiscal year due to upcoming larger expenditure for special project and the increase in capital outlay transfer. The waterfront sustained its operation through various revenues such as the lease, the slip, and parking fees. At Q3, the department experienced modest revenue growth, about 4.8% increase with last year, maintained mainly by parking service and marina management division. Spending stay with the trend, 69% of budget. At the 9-month mark, Waterfront has an operation result of $700,000 and anticipate a loss of $800,000 by the end of the fiscal year. The downtown parking revenue is at $8.3 million, or 56% of budget, a slight increase with fiscal year 24. Parking revenue are in target of $4.7 million, a slight increase with last year, but outdoor business facility rent revenue is significantly under budget, at about 56% at this point. The division is working with business owner to set up payment plan to help recover the loss in revenue. Downtown parking decided to submit a Q3 budget adjustment to reduce its revenue by $3.8 million. The adjustment will be reflected with Q4 financial information. Expense at $8.5 million is 67% of budget. Projection for the year is a use of reserve for $600,000. And the final one is the golf. The golf account for the operation of the municipal golf course. Its activity resulted to $3.5 million in revenue at the mark of the third quarter, with corresponding expense for $2.8 million. The golf division keeps a strong consistency across its business. End of fiscal year operational result is projected at $393,000, a decrease with fiscal year 24, mostly related to higher costs for critical infrastructure repair at the golf course. And on that note, I will turn it back to Mr. DeMartini.
Thank you so much, Ms. Licoli. Attachment 3 in your packet today includes a number of budget adjustments that are before you. These are more routine in nature. Many of them are just more technical to sort of realign where we think that staff will end up for both revenues and expenditures by the end of the fiscal year. The overall impact in the general fund, for example, of the variety of budget adjustments is very, very minimal, about $53,000 worth of expenditures. And you can see that there are a number of other sort of special revenue, enterprise fund, and other funds that are impacted by some of these budget adjustments. They're highlighted here on this slide, and they're detailed in line item level in attachment 3. I did want the committee to be aware of one clerical error on one of the budget adjustments that is proposed before you today. It is on page 7 for the golf course capital fund. This is an appropriation request to increase appropriation in the golf capital fund due to the higher than budgeted costs for infrastructure repair project. It says $20,000 and it should be $200,000. So we missed a zero. I apologize for that. The revenue appropriation is correct, so it aligns directly to that. So I just want to note that for the committee when you pass your recommendation on to the full city council, if you could do so, including that clerical correction. There are a number of position changes that are before you today as well. The subsequent attachments in your packet also include the updated salary schedule and position control resolution for the city. Those reclassifications are listed here. Again, this is a quarterly process that departments will go through, reviewing these requests with the Human Resources Department to really make sure that it's the appropriate job class that is performing those specific functions. And work changes and evolves over time, and so we really want to make sure that it's the right position, the right job class. Chair Freeman noted language that was in the Finance Committee agenda report, And I'm just going to highlight and clarify that for one of the position reclass in the Human Resources Department, from a Human Resources Analyst 2 to a Senior Human Resources Analyst, there is an incremental cost increase to doing so. That is a higher job class. And in the Finance Committee agenda report, it says that the cost in fiscal year 2026 will be $191,196. That's the total cost of the position. It's not an increase by that amount. So I just wanted to clarify that language that Chair Freeman had noted in the report itself. And I think that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for the presentation. So I'll open up to questions from my colleagues. Member Santa Maria.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. Just one clarifying question for slide number 6. Mr. DiMartini, you mentioned Measure I was in one of those pie slices, I guess. Would that be under sales and use tax, or where is Measure I for revenues?
Yes, Committee Member Santa Maria, it is, let's see. I think we lumped it into the other revenue one for now, just because we haven't actually received any revenue yet. And so when you see future iterations of this pie chart, we will break it out as a specific slice. So you will see it very clearly going forward.
I see. So it will be separate from the sales and use tax
Yes,
then? Okay.
yeah, so it will be a completely separate category of revenue that we will report accordingly.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Great, thank you. I have just one question. In the staff report, it references that actually in April, we contracted with NHS advisors to review our general fund multi-year forecast, and that their review and their calculations were aligned with ours. But there was one thing I just wanted a clarification. It said that their assumptions were more conservative. Can you just explain what that means and any implications that could have on us?
Yes, Chair Freeman, I'd be happy to. And so our review with NHA advisors, we were very happy to bring them on board and do a really sort of thorough independent review of our multi-year forecasting processes. And they built their own model and compared it against the model that staff uses internally. And what we found through that process is that their independent review indicated that the city and staff are implementing best practices, and our model is pretty close in line with the assumptions that they're using. They indicated though that their model assumptions tend to be a little bit more conservative than the model that we use, meaning that we are projecting a little bit of higher revenue growth with certain revenues such as sales tax and transient occupancy tax as an example than their model. And I believe that that's a reflection of staff being here and working very closely and directly with hotels, for example, or Visit Santa Barbara when it comes to our TOT projections. We work very closely with our sales tax auditor and compliance firm to sort of understand the basis behind the revenue projections that they put out. And so I think it's an indication of just us having a local perspective versus some of the assumptions that NHA advisors might be using because they work with clients all across the state of California. So those are just some takeaways that we learned and wanted to acknowledge and wanted to bring forward to this committee.
Great. Thank you. Great news that we're in line with them and that we're independently auditing our projections. So we have another set of eyes on it. It gives us more confidence overall. So appreciate that. Since there's no more comments, I'll open up to public or questions, public comment. Not seeing any in chambers. Is there anybody online who wishes to speak to this item?
Chair Freeman, we have one hand raised.
All right.
We have Emiliano Campobello. You can unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you, council members. It's a pleasure to address you today, and thank you for this presentation, staff of our city situation. I'm an environmental scientist working on a lot of different levels, specifically focusing on energy efficient green technologies for purification of facilities and vehicles. And so I'm just looking at this and seeing that, there are really a lot of structural budget deficits that obviously need to be addressed as the years are going on. And we have losses in water, airport, clean energy, waterfront, and other areas. So, I think that there's some systemic problems that when approached using some best practices that have been developed with advanced technologies that can help us reduce operating costs as well as energy use and costs significantly. So this is something that I'll be preparing some information to present on June 3rd, and I'll be emailing some information for your review before then. So I just want to let you be aware of that out here in the community, some of us are looking at these things and trying to find solutions as well. And I thank you all for your work. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments?
No hands are raised, Chair Friedman.
Great, so I'll close public comment and turn over to my colleagues for comments and then eventual motion. And when you make that, if you could include the reference to the golf fund. Who's up first? Member Harmon.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. No comments other than the usual gratitude. Just continue to appreciate your careful stewardship of our city's tax dollars. So I'm happy to make the motion unless Councilmember Santamaria wants to make them. Okay. I move that we forward, or I move the staff recommendation with the change to reflect the updated, the golf fund updates as specified by our finance director.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Motion's been made, seconded, and I concur. It's great to be back and know that the fiscal situation has not deteriorated significantly in my absence. So you guys make it easy to come back. So with that, all in favor? Aye. It passes unanimously. And with that, we are adjourned and see you all at 2.
Thank you very much.